At dawn in the North Atlantic, the pride of the Royal Navy, 42,000 tons of steel, reputation, and firepower vanished almost without warning. Britain's flagship was designed to outrun death, yet in just 3 minutes, it was torn apart by a single fatal weakness. What hidden flaw doomed history's most famous battlecruiser? And how did that decision seal the fate of an entire crew? Naval architects after World War I faced a dilemma. How do you create a ship that can chase any enemy and still survive a gunfight with the heaviest opponents afloat? HMS Hood was their answer. A 42,000-ton battlecruiser, the largest warship in the world when she entered service in 1920. Her silhouette promised dominance, with 8 15-inch guns and engines that could drive her to 31 knots, outpacing most rivals of her day. But every knot of speed came at a price. To keep Hood light enough to run down enemy cruisers and battlecruisers, designers made compromises where it mattered most. Armor protection. Hood's main belt, thick slabs of steel along her sides, could blunt shells fired on a flat trajectory, the type expected in close-range duels. But the deck, stretching from bow to stern, was another story. It was only 1.5 to 3 inches thick in places, and it was never meant to stop shells dropping in a steep arc from great distance. In the 1920s, that seemed a safe bet. Most naval battles were expected to be fought at close range, where side armor counted for more than overhead protection. As the decades passed, naval gunnery changed. Guns grew more powerful, engagement ranges lengthened, and plunging fire, shells descending almost vertically, became a deadly threat. Proposals to thicken Hood's deck armor surfaced again and again in Admiralty papers. Each time they ran up against budget cuts, treaty limits, and shifting priorities. Hood's thin deck remained, a relic of the era that built her. The trade-off was clear: unmatched speed and firepower, paid for with a vulnerability that would only become fully apparent under the guns of a new generation of battleships. Orders crackled across the bridge as the North Atlantic closed in around Hood and her consorts. Vice Admiral Lancelot Holland, eyes fixed on the plot table, directed the force northwest toward the Denmark Strait, where Bismarck and Prinz Eugen were reported. The weather worsened with every mile. Wind lashed the decks, and a low grey ceiling pressed down, swallowing the horizon. Visibility shrank to under 10 miles, then less. Lookouts strained to spot enemy masts through curtains of spray and drifting fog. In the operations room, officers charted the German course by wireless intercepts and merchant ship reports. Every update pressed home the urgency. Bismarck was loose in the Atlantic, threatening the lifeline of British convoys. Hood, with the new battleship Prince of Wales in company, was the only force close enough to intercept before the Germans could vanish into the open sea. Crews moved to action stations. Men checked cordite charges and ammunition hoists, sealed watertight doors, and donned anti-flash gear. The sense of routine gave way to a sharper edge as the clock ran toward dawn. The ship's engines thundered at full power, driving her through heavy seas at over 27 knots. Salt spray stung faces on the open bridge, and the cold bit deep. As the British ships closed the gap, the tactical dilemma grew sharper. The worsening visibility offered cover, but it also threatened to mask the enemy until the range was dangerously short. Holland's plan was simple: get close, hit hard, and rely on Hood's side armor to withstand the first blows. But beneath the discipline and bravado, officers knew the risk. The North Atlantic, vast and unforgiving, offered no margin for error. Every decision now pointed straight toward battle. On the 24th of May 1941, the Denmark Strait was a cauldron of mist, cold spray, and tension. At 5:52, Hood's forward turrets roared to life, flinging 15-inch shells toward a shape in the haze. It was Prinz Eugen, not Bismarck, a misidentification born of shifting smoke. The German ships replied almost instantly. Shell splashes leapt up around Hood, and within minutes, a hit from Prinz Eugen set off a minor fire near the mainmast. But the British flagship pressed on. Vice Admiral Holland, watching the range drop to just over 17,000 yards, weighed his next move. The plan was to close the distance fast, where Hood's side armor could blunt the worst of Bismarck's guns. But the geometry of battle was changing by the second. Holland ordered a 30-degree turn to port, a maneuver designed to bring Hood's aft turrets into play and concentrate firepower. This turn meant swinging the ship broadside to the enemy, exposing the long, thin deck to the full arc of incoming shells. The bridge crew relayed the command, and Hood began to swing left. Smoke from the funnels and gunfire drifted across the decks, mingling with the fog. The sea was alive with the thunder of salvos and the shriek of incoming shells. In the confusion, Prince of Wales kept her guns on Bismarck, while Hood's gunners struggled to correct their aim. Every second the range closed, the risk grew sharper. At these distances, Bismarck's shells could plunge almost vertically, seeking out the weak points in Hood's armor. The next moments would decide everything. A single shell arced down from Bismarck, piercing Hood's thin aft deck and plunging toward the magazines below. The moment it struck, a blinding flash shot skyward, dwarfing the ship itself. Witnesses on Prince of Wales and Suffolk saw a pillar of fire leap hundreds of feet into the air. Within seconds, Hood's entire midsection vanished in a cloud of flame, smoke, and steel. The shockwave tore the ship in two. Her bow reared up, hesitated, then slipped beneath the waves. The stern twisted, capsized, and followed. The entire sequence lasted barely 3 minutes. On board, there was no time for order or escape. Cordite charges ignited in the magazines, sending fire racing through passageways and tearing apart bulkheads. The noise was deafening, a roar that drowned out even the pounding of the North Atlantic. Of the 1,418 men aboard, only 3 survived. Ted Briggs, William Dundas, and Bob Tilburn found themselves thrown clear, clinging to wreckage in an ocean slick with oil and debris. Their accounts speak of shock and disbelief. One moment, a living ship. The next, nothing but twisted metal and empty sea. HMS Hood, the pride of the Royal Navy, was gone in less time than it takes to boil a kettle. For the men of Prince of Wales, and for the world, the loss was almost impossible to comprehend. The cause of the explosion would haunt investigators for decades. The question remained, how could a ship of Hood's size and power vanish so completely, so quickly? In August 2001, a search team led by David Mearns pinpointed Hood's final resting place beneath 3,400 meters of frigid North Atlantic water. The operation relied on side-scan sonar to trace the seafloor for signs of wreckage, followed by remotely operated vehicles known as ROVs, capable of withstanding crushing pressure at those depths. The first sonar sweeps revealed an unmistakable pattern. Not a single hull, but 3 main sections scattered across nearly a mile. The bow lay inverted, the stern upright but twisted, and a tangled field of midships debris stretched between them. Without raising a single artifact, the team mapped every major fragment, preserving the site as a war grave. For the first time, the physical evidence replaced decades of speculation, offering a silent but detailed witness to Hood's violent end. Forensic analysis of the wreck leaves little doubt about what happened to Hood. The pattern of destruction, with plating peeled outwards near the aft magazines, a debris field stretching more than 1 kilometer, and the stern section capsized but largely intact, points to a massive internal explosion. Investigators studying the twisted steel and outward blasted bulkheads traced the force back to the aft magazine, just beneath the thin deck that once shielded Hood from above. Ballistic models show that a 15-inch shell from Bismarck, striking at a steep angle, had enough energy to punch through the deck armor and ignite the cordite stored below. The resulting blast tore the ship apart in seconds, scattering wreckage in a direction that matches eyewitness accounts and survivor testimony. No evidence of external torpedo damage or progressive flooding appears in the wreckage. The verdict is clear. A single shell, a vulnerable deck, and a magazine eruption that no crew could have stopped. Every modern warship now carries lessons forged in those 3 minutes: steel and safety, and the cost of untested confidence. Magazine protection standards worldwide trace back to this cold Atlantic grave. In the deep, one explosion still shapes how navies build and remember. Share your thoughts below.